So today I'm going to talk about my favorite chapter in Dune, which is the chapter where, spoilers alert, there's going to be a lot of Dune spoilers for just not only the first book, but pretty much the whole series probably here. So if you don't want any spoilers, or if you haven't read Dune, probably don't watch this. Uh, where Liet Kynes, the Imperial planetologist, dies. It's right in the middle of the book. I think it's really interesting because to me, it might have been one of the first things that Herbert wrote because it sums up a lot of the themes and the actual plot of the whole series is sort of told to Kynes by his own dead father, the earlier Imperial planetologist from whom he inherited the title. Uh, I think this is a interesting chapter to focus on because it's not in the 1984 movie, and I'm not sure if it's in the 2000 sci-fi series, which I've never seen, but I'm gonna watch today, which I'm excited about. It's kind of unfilmable in a certain way because nothing really happens. He's like sitting there in the desert, lying there in the desert, and then he dies, and he's talking to the ghost of his father. Sort of, he's dying of heat exposure, and he's remembering things that his father told him when he was a lot younger. And the things that he's remembering are ideas about how they can terraform Arrakis into a planet that's more suitable for humans, which is like broadly one of the main plot points of the larger series, the 6 books. Uh, so it's the chapter starts. The man crawled across a dune, and so it's cool because it's like it sounds like the first thing that maybe Herbert would ever write. Right? He's like, he had this idea. He wanted to write a story about planetary ecology or just ecology in general. He wanted to write a sci-fi story that incorporated ideas about ecology. And then broadly, of course, there's a lot of themes to Dune. They come in religion, messianic figures, ideas about politics. How can you have like an enlightened leader? The dangers of uh, authority in general. How can you overcome fear, of course, to do the right thing, even when it's difficult, even when you have to sacrifice a lot, or you have to sacrifice people around you to get to, I guess, certain goal, and whether that like compromises like that are worthwhile. The compromise that Liet Kynes, of course, makes is that he is supposed to help the Harkonnens. He's supposed to help the alliance between the Emperor Padisha and the Harkonnens. He's supposed to betray the Atreides, but when he meets the Atreides, he's impressed with the Duke, and then he's increasingly impressed with Paul, and he ends up making a bond with Paul. Making in the last chapter where they see each other, they have an oath of loyalty to each other. That Paul is like coming into his own as a prescient figure, and he makes this gamble where he says that he would lay down his life if necessary for Kynes, and it compels Kynes to make the same oath to him. And Kynes, like sure enough, dies because he helps Jessica and Paul to escape, and then he is taken by the Sardaukar dressed up as Harkonnens, and he's thrown out into the desert because they think it's ironic to just let him die from exposure rather than just putting a gun to his head and killing him. So this is the scene. He's just out on a dune in the desert, and he's having these visions of his own father, and that sort of ties into all these themes about fatherhood that, of course, are all over Dune. Like fathers have to pay for this, or sons have to pay for the sins of their fathers, but sons also need to carry on the work of their fathers, and they need to do it better. They need to. There has to be this sort of improvement from generation to generation for anything to get done. And so in this scene, we sort of first get the revelation of how the ecology, how the like movement, the system of like moisture and everything works in like the system of the ecology of Dune is sort of revealed to us about, and it's kind of like difficult to grasp. I think it's like expanded upon later on in the other books, but basically the sand trout, I think they're called, which are the like sort of the latent pre worms, like pre versions of the worms before they come together to become a worm. They're sort of like, not like an egg really, but something similar to that. I think they cover up water masses like in the ground or something like that. Later on, when they become worms, water is harmful to them. But this is how spice is formed somehow, and this is first alluded to here. I kind of don't really understand it, to be honest, and I'm sure there are other videos that can explain it like a lot better. But it's fun to get that first glimpse, like that first taste of what is really going on here. Like, how is there water on this desert planet? How are there animals? Because there's in this whole chapter, there's like hawks flying around above Kynes because he is about to die, and like these hawks just can tell that he is about to die because he's lying there, right? He's not really moving. So they think that when he dies, they're gonna like be able to eat him, right? Or harvest his water, essentially. And I think the hawk is the sigil of House Atreides too. So it's interesting. You have like this pre-spice mass underneath him, and so like the sand trout sort of changing the ground beneath him. The sand trout, like the pre-worms. So he doesn't. I don't think he gets eaten by a worm really, but it's like the baby worm sort of underneath him, and the hawks above him show this like merging of Arrakis with the Atreides, because the Atreides had nothing to do with Arrakis before they were given this fiefdom by the Emperor in order to lure them into a trap because he didn't politically he was scared of the Duke, right? He likes the Duke personally, but politically he's scared of the Duke and the Duke's family. So that combination of like the worms and the hawks is like something huge with something that flies, something graceful. Flying is like a big deal because of the Atreides they lived on Caladan, and they fly ornithopters everywhere, and they're rich. And now Paul is gonna become like the little mouse who scurries in the desert. Like he's gonna become something else, and then of course he'll learn to ride the worms and stuff. He's gonna be associated with that. But it's interesting like that the worms and the hawks coming together, because with that pledge of loyalty, they actually like become a family. And of course, like Kynes is dead, he doesn't live to see it, but they do become a family because Paul marries Chani. Chani is the mother of Leto 2, and then the other Leto 2, both of them, and Ganima, of course. Who's the mother of all the subsequent like characters like down the line, basically. So in that, they become a family. I've been thinking about this. I think about this chapter a lot, but Max von Sydow died about a month ago, so rest in power. Great actor. He was in the '84 movie. He was great as Liet Kynes. In the new movie, which I'm really looking forward to, the Denis films, he's going to have Sharon Duncan Brewster play Liet Kynes, so it's a gender swapped role, but I mean it should be really cool. I don't know if she's gonna die in this first movie. Uh, it's hard to say. I assume she's gonna be Chani's mother. I'm sure she's gonna be great. Like I think it's. I mean, I don't think that adaptations of books should be super like they shouldn't have every detail exactly lifted from the books because things work differently in films than they do in novels. And if this is what Denis wants to do, like I'm sure it's gonna work out really well. I don't know her as an actress, but like I haven't seen a lot of his films, but I really liked Arrival. I think it's gonna be cool. And I mean, just gender swapped roles can be great. The whole series of Dune, a lot of it is about women who are powerful. So it's the more you can exhibit that, the better it is, and the more it's played by a woman of color. So the more you can like grow the base of who's going to go see this film, I think is better, and the more you can downplay the sort of like white savior aspect, because that's obviously a problematic aspect of the stories. I mean, it was written 60 years ago. A lot of things have changed since then. And I don't know necessarily that Paul is a white savior, because he like leads a lot of people to their deaths, and like the whole thing is it's not black or white. Like he doesn't necessarily save Arrakis. Like so this whole time in this chapter they're talking about like how they can terraform Arrakis, right? And so he's like the sort of whole arc of how they're going to terraform it is being told by like the older Kynes, his father, to him, how they can they have to trap the moisture in places by these wind traps so that the moisture doesn't blow everywhere. That's the problem. There's all this wind because it's a desert. And then you need grass, and then the grass will be able to eventually create like small bodies of water. And you need like the right animals there who can cultivate that landscape. And Kynes is like, he's dying and he's desperate, and so he's saying stuff like, "Shut up, old man." Like he literally says, "Shut up, old man," which is like a fun. It's just like a fun thing, like in the middle of this like scene. It's like Kynes is not this super serious character. Like when they first hear about Liet Kynes earlier in the book, I don't remember who it is. I think it's like when someone encounters the Shut Up Mapes or something, but they think Liet means like a deity because the way that the Fremen talk about him, they don't know that it's like a leader. And then they meet Kynes later, and he's sort of mysterious, and they don't necessarily know that Liet and Kynes are the same person until like Jessica puts it together. But it foreshadows that Paul will become this religious figure. And sure enough, like when Kynes is hearing the voice of his father in this, he's hearing him describe how religion and law need to be combined for the Fremen, and they need to have this fanaticism so that no one can mess up the terraforming by breaking the law, because if they're breaking the law, they're breaking religious laws, and they'll have to be put to death. So it's this like dangerous fanaticism which allows them to terraform the planet, which allows the rule of the Atreides over the entire universe, and eventually leads to the destruction of the planet itself. So it's like there's a lot going on here, and that's why he's saying sort of "Shut up, old man." And even the older Kynes says, he says like, we need the bravery, not the bravery of individuals, which you're seeing here. Kynes has sacrificed himself, Duncan has sacrificed himself, but they need the bravery of the whole population. Like you need, it's like people are going to become expendable in order to have this goal, which is like a scary thing. Like and that's why the jihad, Paul's jihad, is a scary thing. Because there's something like billions of people die, and like the whole thing is like, it's this question throughout the whole story. Like, is this worth it? Like, obviously, Paul is a better ruler than the Emperor is, and he's better than the Harkonnens, even though he is a Harkonnen. But and even though not all the Harkonnens are necessarily evil, like if you go back into into the other stories, the Harkonnens who meet in this book obviously are all evil, but the older Kynes says there could be no more terrible disaster than if you have like a hero who comes in and people like a hero who messes with the heads of the Fremen, uh, because it'll they already have this religious fanaticism with them. If they have like a messianic figure, then that's like real danger right there, because who knows what they can do, and that's like what we see in Dune Messiah, like, and it's what's sort of Leto 2. I don't know. I kind of think of it as like Leto 3 because Leto 2 is in Dune and then he's only in the first book. But I mean, Leto 2 or Leto 3, he has to contend with that. He has to, and like he doesn't even necessarily get along with his father. Like when he meets him, because he recognizes that he needs to be better than him because his father created this whole mess and didn't have like a solution for it. And then the chapter ends with this. He says the most persistent principles of the universe are accident and error. So it's like, yeah, it's like, Kynes sets up this whole situation like by helping them, and later on, of course, with the Golden Path, Leto, the God Emperor, he he surmises that the Golden Path has saved humanity from itself, because he puts it on all of these. He sends humans out throughout the universe to where humanity is not on one linear line anymore as a population. Like nothing could destroy it because he spreads it out so far. So in this sense, maybe Kynes helps save all of humanity, but I mean that's up for speculation, right? I mean, like the Golden Path, like you have to, and if we're only talking about this first book, like a lot of people end up dying because of this jihad. A lot of people are saved too, in certain senses. But the most persistent principle of the universe being accident and error, it's one of these like Herbert isms that sort of throws you for a loop, because you're like, well, what is this guy? What are the themes of this book? The theme is, is the theme just like, is it chaos? Is it entropy? Entropy versus systems. He's talking about planetology, ecology, and systems. But systems are in ecology are never perfect. There's always error and accident, and there needs to be for things to evolve. But it's like, is that Herbert throws you some of these lines where you're like, does this guy believe in anything? Like, he was really smart. But it's when people tell you like, oh, the theme of Dune is this or the theme of Dune is this, like you have to be careful because you don't really know. He himself was saying like entropy, systems versus entropy, and even disentropy is like a large theme of it. Like the butterfly effect, the little things that we do. And so I just love that Kynes, while he's about Kynes sitting there thinking, I'm a desert creature, and then he gets killed by his own desert. It's like Paul's not a desert creature. Paul is from a different planet, but Paul is able to manipulate this system. And Paul says what his goal is, like a couple of pages before that. He says, I'm going to take the whole empire. Like, I'm going to become the leader of it. And it's not for power itself. It's to preserve something. Like, he recognizes that chaos is about to erupt between the Landsrod and the Emperor and stuff like that. It's out of a sense of preservation. He has to grab this power, but like he's not going to like save Arrakis for itself. And that's it. So I'm about to watch Dune 2000. Looking forward to it. Got this, which I haven't tried, which I'm really excited about, and some more local stuff. Shout out HB, the best guys doing it. Shout out the Boogie Don and the BK. Everyone in New York, be safe. Everyone out there. And the spice must flow.